Happy St. Patty's Day, everybody. I wanted to jump in here today and talk about something I've been working on. I've got some fishing lure stuff to talk about. I'm going to talk about some pressure cooker corned beef later today. You'll see that video later. And I might even try to get out on the water 1 or 2 days this weekend. I'm not sure which, but I've got a little bit of a full schedule, so I don't know if I can carve out the time, but I'll do my best. As you know, I've been fishing with my BFS, my ultralight bait casting system. Look up and click on that link to see that video about BFS and what it is. I'm a big Whopper Plopper fan. It's not always ideal. It's a great lure. I have nothing against it, and there's really no reason for me to create anything different other than the fact that it's winter, it's cold, and I'm bored. So I've been playing around with making my own lures, and the first thing I approached was like, hey, could I emulate a Whopper Plopper in any way, shape, or form? And I'm not trying to like redo the Whopper Plopper. I'm trying to make one that's light and little. And I think this is going to be the one that I throw on my BFS. I actually had this lure out yesterday, thrown it in my front yard, and I was getting about 40 to 50 feet per cast on this. I think that's about how far it was going. This is the little guy right here. It's nothing real special. It looks very similar to the ones I've been making. That's a 4-bladed buzzbait blade. I cut off 3 blades, and I'm going to give this thing a swim test later, but that piece is going to loop and flop just like a Whopper Plopper tail. I'm also going to build some different combinations, and my friend Chris, who is a fly fisherman, has been tying me these really awesome looking feather trailers. I just got to give him some props because he put these together for me, and they really look great. So let me walk you through a few of these. So here is like kind of a mustard green with some sparkle string or whatever you call it down in there. Look at these things, man. They're just so great. I call this the Zsa Zsa Gabor. Look at that. I mean, if you want a little white and red, here you go. I call this the Arab. No idea why I would call it the Arab. A little bit of white jazz in there, a little translucent. I definitely have some new toys and parts and pieces to play with to make some really good combinations of this lure, but I think this lure is going to be perfect. I was casting it yesterday. It worked out great. Let me just walk you through how I made it, and you can get a look at the design and the build process and see if it's something you might want to play with. To start things off, I'll grab a balsa wood body and start carving and kind of whittling down to a shape that I'm happy with. Once I have a shape that I'm happy with, I proceed to sand and smooth everything out, try to even up the body and make sure that the shape is symmetrical. I then grab one of the buzzbait blades and start cutting off the blades until I end up with one single blade. I center drill the lure body and then put the shaft wire through the center to get things started. Once I'm happy with the placement of the shaft wire, I test fit a few of the pieces on there to make sure that it's shaping up the way I want it to. I go ahead and clip off one of the wires, creating a straight piece of wire, and then put a small fold at the top, and that fold will hook onto the center post wire as I pass through, and that's for the belly hook. Once I'm happy with the placement, it's time to do the 2-part epoxy. I use 5-minute epoxy and I mix it thoroughly before applying to the parts of the lure. I glue everything in place, and I make sure that I put enough topical epoxy on top of the voids and the pockets to fill everything in. The longer you work with this epoxy, the stiffer it gets, so you can kind of use it as a filler. Once the glue dries the next day, it's time to build some of the hook loops. One of the more difficult things to do, I think, in lure building. You get used to it over time, though. There's several tutorials online on how to do this. Time to shrink wrap the body. I put the jig skins on the lure and carefully place it in boiling water until it shrinks up and fits the way I want it to. Now I'm going to do the rear hook loop. Take my time for spacing because you have to end up with exactly the right amount. Once that loop is completed, it's time to start mounting some hooks. The feather trailer on this first hook was a little bit long, so I went ahead and trimmed it up. I hope my friend's not too upset with me. The split rings and the hooks go on next. You're pretty much finished with a nice completed lure by the time you're done. You'll need to put on some eyes, but before I do that, I wanted to float test it. Once everything got wet, it seemed like it was sitting in the water just about perfect. It's a very, very buoyant lure. Sits really high on top of the water, but I think once it's completed, it looks really nice.